Hi everyone, I'm Dana. I'm the general partner here at Heavybit. The thing about Heavybit is we help developer products go to market. Part of that is actually figuring out how to do proper GA launches, releases, all of that, and still at the same time be interesting to the journalists. So aligning your organizational objectives with something that people outside of your organization actually care about. So in order to help our founders and companies do that, they kind of have to figure out who they're actually pitching and tailor those pitches to the right outlets. So I'm just going to jump right into it. Our panelists tonight include Chris Preimesberger. He's the editor of features and analysis at eWeek. He is the founding editor of both IT Manager's Journal and DevX.com. And he, in his own words, has said he's been covering cloud since before it was called cloud. Blair Hanley Frank is from VentureBeat. He covers AI and cloud computing. In the past, he was the IDG US news correspondent, did a lot of analysis of public cloud. And then at GeekWire, he covered, is it Apple, Google, Microsoft, sort of all
Facebook, Twitter, Yahoo.
Yeah.
Amazon, real estate tech, startups, you name it, I probably did it.
Yeah, no big deal. And then finally, Frederic Lardinois, who is the writer and news editor at TechCrunch, and he also started a site called Silicon Filter, and he has written at Read Write Web as well, and covered the news beat there.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, just news.
Twitter, Facebook. Who else did you name?
Yahoo, Amazon,
Yeah.
Microsoft.
I don't think there was Twitter when I started at Read Write, but that's
Yeah.
just.
So this is our panelists for tonight, and really I wanted to be able to help you tailor your pitches and releases. So part of that is figuring that out. I wanted to start actually with Chris, you. What really differentiates your audience from, say, TechCrunch and VentureBeat?
They read. No, I'm kidding. Sort of. Our audience is probably a little older. We used to be PC Week for 20 years before we decided that we painted ourselves into a corner with that name. We weren't just writing about PCs all the time. So we went to eWeek in 2000, excuse me, and we moved from New York, where it was for 28 years as Ziff Davis publications, to Quinn Street 5 years ago. So we have a new gen kind of a publisher who's really into digital. Ziff Davis's idea of a digital approach was putting up a banner ad at the top of a story, and that was it. See you later, that kind of thing. So this company, Quinn Street, is our publisher, is a real scientific type lead gen company, and so we supply a lot of the content for our readership. Our readership goes anywhere. We figure about 1 to 2 million viewers per month on eWeek, and that's it. We've got about 15 sections of eWeek, and one of them I started 4 years ago, interestingly called Innovation, where I like to write about startups and new ideas and thought leaders and entrepreneurs. And it's right now it's one of our highest trafficked subsections of eWeek. So everybody wants to know what's going to happen and what people are thinking about doing and what companies they're starting. So that's kind of where we are right now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about it earlier, and you'd kind of mentioned that the CIO was definitely in your audience group. So I guess how is that different from like?
I think we've been around a while, and I think our readership is a little older than most. Kind of, same color hair as me, kind of. People who've been around in the business for a while, and they're making decisions on buying software and hardware and services on a regular basis, because they know PC Week for years and they know eWeek. And they get our emails, and we're really good at email blasting everybody. So we do about 24 of those a week. And so, yeah, we have to keep reminding people that we're publishing stuff, because you have to push those notifications out. But
Yeah.
I think we have a lot of C-level people that read us, and older, mid to higher level executives and data center managers and developers. So Probably, I think we're over 35. Most of our readers are probably over 35.
Cool. So how does that differ, Blair, for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like the CEOs and CIOs are ignoring us by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
But we're definitely, VentureBeat was born in the blog age. We don't have any of the illustrious history that comes from having been PC Week for as long as PC Week has been PC Week before it was no longer PC Week anymore. But we are focused on covering sort of the emerging technology and the really impactful technologies that shape the world. And so that's what our readers come to us for. These are people who are, tech literate, if not, they may not be on the sort of deep engineering end of the spectrum, but they know their Salesforces from their Oracles before they come and visit us. We cover a pretty wide range of topics. If you don't read VentureBeat on a regular basis, there's a decent chance that you're reading GamesBeat, because we've got a fantastic team just dedicated to covering gaming in all of its many aspects and facets. We're focused on a wide range of topics, everything from technology in America's heartland to AI, cloud computing, obviously. As our name implies, we do a lot of venture capital coverage, but it is not the only thing that we do, and it's certainly not the only thing that we care about. I do a lot more writing on product and technology than I do on venture overall.
Got it. So, I mean, it seems like you cover everything. Like, you yourself cover a lot of different topics, and that's got to be pretty hard. Between you and TechCrunch, in the day, it was like those are publications that go head-to-head with each other. I mean, would you say that that's consistent today, or?
Yes, I think we are definitely competitors. We are definitely of a kind, but it's not like Frederic and I are constantly at one another's throats. I haven't had to suplex him yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting there. He used to be at IDG, so I would ignore him. But no, it's different. I'm kidding. We travel on the same circuit with every. But
that's one of the things that it can be hard to see from the outside, but we all see each other at the same events. Like, this is, especially in the Bay Area and around Silicon Valley, like, tech journalism really is a scene because we're all around and we're all covering similar stuff. Yeah,
we're all real tired of each other too. We see each other.
Yeah.
But especially in the B2B enterprise dev tools space, there is 6 of us, so we see a lot of each other. Yeah. I mean, I'm exaggerating. It's probably 10, but still.
Yeah.
So what do you think differentiates the way that you write about a story versus how Blair writes about a story?
I think our audience is a little bit different, because maybe not that much. Our audience might be quite similar. Our audience is obviously startup founders, more often on the technical side. Not always, but startup founders, VCs, like you. We do a lot of funding coverage, no doubt about that. We tend to be a little bit, not looser, but maybe a little bit more irreverent, I hope, sometimes. I hope. It's just the TechCrunch style. But otherwise, we're very similar in how we actually cover, and also in what we decide to cover, I think, between VentureBeat and
you guys are anxious to get the first story up, if possible, right? You're really on breaking news, aren't you?
Sure. Breaking news is our bread and butter, I think. No doubt about that. And it depends. We definitely push for the exclusive.
Sure. We're a little different in that we don't really care as much about being first, but we want to have maybe something a little bit deeper that it'll come out a couple hours later, maybe half a day later, but we don't care that much.
Totally.
Maybe we should care, but we don't. We would rather spend a little extra time on it and get an analyst in it, or a domain expert inside, or go back and look at eWeeks. We have like 200,000 stories in our store going back to 2000. And there may be something relevant or irrelevant, to do with writing a current story that I might be able to pull from the past, a quote or some kind of a perspective. So that's how we look at it. And you guys are pretty much breaking news too.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, as a journalist, you kind of, especially in my position, you know, I've done a lot of news writing, and it's always striking that balance, right? Where you have to be on top of the news of the day. It's not a great look if something happens that's really significant, and you're just kind of like, well, I'm working on something else. I'm not noticing this amazing thing that just happened around me. Like the part of the job is being aware and being connected.
Sure.
But at the same time, you know, my apologies to all of you in here, but writing about incremental feature updates is not what gets me up in the morning. And so, you know, it's those longer form pieces where I'm able to sort of piece together a bigger story where, you know, it may not be by number the most of my publishing output, but it's definitely something that I do still spend a lot of time and energy on.
Yeah. So you guys are talking about breaking news, but the reality is like it's pretty hard to have breaking news if you're an unknown entity in the space. I mean, when you talk about breaking news, are you talking about the big sort of monster monolithic software giants? And if so, how's everybody in this room supposed to kind of, you know, get some face time, you know?
At this point, if you're an early stage company, I don't know if my mic is on, I don't hear myself, but
we can hear you.
There's you don't want to have breaking news, because if you have breaking news, that means you shut down, your founder did something really stupid. You don't want to have your breaking news is your funding, your launch, you know, major product updates, you get acquired. Otherwise, you don't have breaking news.
Or if you hire somebody like Woz to be your chief scientist or something, that'd be news.
Yeah. But otherwise, you don't want to have that kind of breaking news.
Yeah.
Your breaking news is milestones that you know ahead of time.
Okay.
Yeah. And for that, I mean, like, when it comes to getting in front of people like us, come to us early, you know, and especially the smaller you are and the earlier and the less known you are, the further out you should be pitching me. I can't speak for anybody else. Up to about 2 weeks ahead of time. Anything longer than that, and it's like, well, okay, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing in 3 weeks, so come back to me in 2. But the smaller you are, generally speaking, you should be pitching earlier, because that means I have time to fit you into my schedule so that there's a chance that I will end up writing about what it is that you're doing. Because, yeah, you have to break through the, like, well, Microsoft put out a feature update today, or, you know, you're announcing your Series A, Series B, Series C funding. Those are sometimes equivalent stories, even though for your company, like, holy cow, we just got, you know, 10 million in funding. This is great. And Microsoft just pushed, you know, GA of SQL Server, and sorry.
Yeah.
But, and so if those two stories come into me at the same time, and I've got time for one, I'm picking SQL Server 9 times out of 10.
We have to. We all have to do that. We have to cover the big companies, because our readers are customers of these big companies.
Yeah.
And their clients or their customers or partners, we have to cover. But I particularly like hearing about new companies and finding out what new problem they're solving and what new cool twist maybe on an old tech they're come up with. And I've told all of our writers, we've got about 20 or 25 really good freelance writers that work for eWeek that have been vetted over years of time and whom we trust implicitly. When they write a story, I've given them freedom to also add it to our innovation section if there's something cool about that new product or service. And it doesn't have to be earth-shaking. It can just be, oh, I like that. I've never heard of that before. Or just a new twist on something older. That would qualify that networking story or that storage story or that server story to also be put into our innovation section. So they all have freedom to do that. innovation a lot of times is a subjective thing, you know. And, oh, I didn't realize that. They're doing that? You know, that would qualify it for 2 places on eWeek rather than just 1.
Can you give me an example of like a very small company that you've covered specifically because they've sort of ticked all the boxes on newsworthiness, timeliness, etc.?
Wow, you would have to ask me that without having my phone. And, our phones are all silenced, by the
Do
way.
you still remember what you write the day after?
You know, I write about 2 stories a day on an average, about 480 to 500 stories a year. That's a lot. And when I write my stories, I make them airtight. The questions are answered. There's links to more information. The quotes are correct. And then I publish it. There it goes. And then I let it out there, and then I go on to the next one. Let me think about that. I mean, really, seriously, I do them all the time, but I can't think off the top of my head right now.
Yeah.
I've definitely got one. There's a company that I wrote about called Broadman 17. They're a small startup out of Israel. And they came to me with a pitch that said, basically, you know, we're able to run object detection algorithms on low power hardware without using specialty hardware. Are you interested? And I'm like, well, yeah, show me the receipts. And it turns out that like they're doing some really, really very interesting stuff with the sparsity of neural networks and you know, very high efficiency machine learning for small embedded devices. And so I'll tell you sort of the boxes that they ticked. First of all, it's an AI machine learning story. So immediately that's, you know, it's in my beat. That's one of the first things that I end up checking. That's like you must be this tall to ride, like you must fit into one of the areas that I actually cover. And then from there, they have a novel result to a really concrete and important problem. Their algorithm that they're selling is something that's going to be useful for self-driving cars, for cameras, for a whole bunch of different machine vision applications. And then they came to me and they're like, hey, here's an exclusive on our funding and our launch. And it's like, okay, yes, this is a slam dunk. You've got an interesting team of brilliant people solving a really fascinating problem that's core to my beat and will be interesting to my readers. Let's absolutely talk.
Do you have an example as well?
I'm wrecking my brain to come up with a good example. There are plenty of them. Some of our writers say I don't write about around under $10 million.
Okay.
I don't do that. Right?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't care if it's a $100, $100,000 or $200,000 round.
Yeah.
You get $100, that's okay. You can keep that to yourself. Say thank you to your parents. But I don't have that. It just has to be something interesting, and maybe something that fits into the current discussion. I don't know. Serverless. I think serverless is here, right? We're really early on, I think, when I wrote about them as an example.
Yeah.
It fits, right? Everybody's talking about serverless, so it's easy. I don't really, the bar for me is just simply has to be interesting. I don't really care that much at what stage
I can't do
it
anything
is.
with that.
Interesting.
Like I need actionable, otherwise you're just going to get the same pitches over and over again.
Well, that happens anyway, but
I'm going to take it back to the like not Facebook style company because I think there's a press gallery that basically is devoted to like, you know, government reporting, to Facebook reporting, to Microsoft reporting. How does a small company like jump into a trend, or actually, how do you how do you figure out that a trend is happening and actually decide to write on it before it's Facebook, before it's somebody large?
Well, ideally, you talk to enough people that you know what's happening in the space. If you're not doing your job right. I think you should be, as a reporter, be somewhat ahead of the curve. That involves speaking to a lot of startups for the most part.
Sure.
So if you're not doing that, you're not doing it right. And as a startup, you can educate us to some degree as well, I think, because you're probably even far more on the ground than we tend to be. And we tend to talk to a lot of people, but you guys know your stuff way better than we will ever. That's why we're reporters and not engineers.
And we're storytellers, right?
Yeah. So if you have a good, if you can convince me that there's a trend happening and you're far ahead, that's awesome. Of course I'll write about you.
I mean, what does that look like? Like lighting it up on Hacker News, or?
That's always great.
Yeah.
I don't
What
know
other
about you guys, but I
sources?
read Hacker News and see what's going on. It's definitely one of my sources for figuring out what's at least happening in a given space.
When I'm feeling particularly happy, I'll read Hacker News.
All right, fair enough.
You asked about a recent story
Right.
I've done with a startup that you
Yeah.
haven't heard of.
Yeah.
I just did a piece a couple weeks ago on a company called Live Stories, and they're based here in the Bay Area. And what they're doing is they're vetting public records and providing public records because we have such a problem with truth now. You know, nobody understands what is truth and what is fake news and what's true, what is real. They're going through and they're vetting records, and it could be a birth rate of a city, it could be income levels of different, but they're public records, and they're preparing them for use for free for people. How they're going to make money off this, I don't know. But you know, that's always the question. How do you monetize anything?
But you wrote on this, and like your audience is sort of a CIO, like technical buyer audience. Like,
yeah,
why
and
was
they're
that
looking
something
for
you chose?
truth. I think we're all looking for truth, and this is there's more to it than this, of course. But I thought it was just really cool what they were doing.
But you're,
It's making for public consumption information that can be used in publications for guys like us, or just for our researchers, or for whatever reason. I just thought that was kind of neat, and so I wrote a piece on it. And I got some feedback from readers too at eWeek. Why did you write that story? No, it was kind of a little bit out of our normal ballpark of B2B IT, but I thought it was just cool. That's all. Subjective.
Yeah, I mean, if it is that subjective, and one way to sort of get covered as an unknown entity, like I'd like to kind of hear what you individually think is cool. Like, what do you wish you could cover?
What do I
Like,
wish?
if it just came across your desk and you're like, this is weird, but I'm going to do this. What do you wish you could cover?
For me, on a personal level, like I wish more companies, especially in the ML space, would come to me with papers. Like if you're publishing a paper that has a novel result in it, or some sort of novel implementation of something, like get at me, because I love that. I love getting to sit down and chat with people who are like, yeah, you know, we figured out this really weird thing. You know, who'd have thunk that, you know, it would work for us to do this particular set of things and get, you know, something really interesting out of it. I mean, if I had to pick something out of my hat of like, I wish I could cover this, like we've cracked the explainability problem with neural networks. Like one of the issues with neural nets is that it's hard to understand why they do things. Because the answer is, well, there are all of these weights, and you get from the input to the output, and because of all of that, you got this answer. And that's really satisfying when you have to ask why that picture of a duck has been labeled a chicken. So if somebody cracks that, like, hey, that'd be cool. I'd be interested to write about that.
Others?
So
What's the cool factor that you wish you could sneak in amongst the large coverage?
Kind of subjective a lot
yeah,
of times.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's the problem, because you're asking for something really actionable for everybody here too,
I mean,
right? And it's
yeah.
often so subjective what we think is really interesting at any given point
Yeah.
in time, and there's so much inbound interest that we, you know, often if the subject heading of your email is not very interesting, that's already it,
Yeah.
right?
I mean,
That's
how
it.
many emails are you getting a day? Like,
Oh, hundreds.
yeah.
Hundreds.
Hundreds.
Literally.
Sure. what would I cover, right? It's that $10 million funding round from Andreessen Horowitz. It's, Madrona Ventures invest somewhere. Yeah, a lot of that kind of stuff that makes it really interesting to cover for us, because that means that there's definitely something there.
There's a news hook.
Yeah,
and then you can go a little deeper into the story. That's what I like to do. I always, when I talk to a new company, I'll say, that's great, I got your background, I see where you're coming from, I know what problem you're solving. Do you guys have a news hook you can give me? And do you have some kind of hard news I can put at the top? And then that's an excuse for me to explain what the company is.
Yeah.
So we have to have that. Here's another story, Dremio, it's Dremio, launches self-service data analytics for data scientists. I think that's really cool. So that was a company I'd never heard of, they're brand new. I just thought, oh, self-service analytics, data scientists, those are all hot topics. And it turned out to be a pretty interesting little story. So that's kind of a thing that I'm looking at.
I am going to open it up for questions for the folks who do this professionally as a living, pitching companies.
I mean, a lot of vendor conferences. The big ones, obviously, Facebook, Google, all those ones. I/O, Google, Next, those kinds of build. I do a lot of open source conferences, Cloud Native Compute Foundation Summit, the Cloud Foundry Summit, OSCON usually, not this year, but I do a lot of those, for example. That's kind of my year usually. That's what keeps me on the road.
I do all the usual suspect ones. The conference season starts in a couple of weeks with VMworld. Then there's Oracle World and BoxWorks and DreamWorks, and every week it seems like there's some big conference.
Twice a week.
Yeah, sometimes twice a week. And then it seems like even the smaller companies now are having user conferences or partner conferences. Companies like HP will have 6 of them a year, that kind of thing. We don't go to all of them. Certainly, we're very picky about what we can't do everything. We cover most of them remotely. When I can, I try to get to see contacts. It's important to sit down with people across the table and talk to them. I think we do a lot of phone interviews and stuff, but if you can sometimes sit down with people, it really does help your insight.
Yeah, nothing. If it's convenient, nothing beats face to face for me.
Yeah.
I mean, around that answer, I think I'll piggyback off of what both of these fellas said. Like it's the big ones are easy. The other thing that I will do is I'll be on the lookout for interesting topic conferences. You'll have there's an O'Reilly AI conference coming up, so I'll be there.
You ever been to the Maker Faire?
I haven't actually. I grew up in the Bay Area. I live in San Francisco. And,
crazy. You'll see the weirdest things there, but it's fun. It's innovative. There's a lot of good ideas there.
The one thing I'll say around conferences is that one of the things that I get, especially around major shows like AWS reInvent, is companies pitching me their news at reInvent. This is about the worst possible idea you could have.
Absolutely.
Because what you are saying is, I think that the news from company X is so sufficiently interesting that it's more important than Amazon's news.
Mm-hmm.
And we are vying for the same amount of time on your schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe once in the past 4.5 years have I written a story pitched to me in that context.
Oh, yeah.
Gotta do it in advance.
Yeah,
2 weeks before, 3 weeks before.
Yeah.
It still fits into the cycle at that point, but it's not doing it.
It's not too far out, close enough. Yep.
But yeah, I mean, the other thing is around our conference schedules. Chris mentioned conference season. Like literally, at the start of September last year, starting the first week of September, I had 9 shows in 5 weeks, basically back to back to back to back to back. And so it's a hectic time for us.
It is. July and August,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Also,
slow
news is great. Like just kind of spot news to keep me going in August. I'm perfectly happy with that.
Yeah.
Also Fridays. There's nothing happens on Fridays. So if you set your embargo for Friday and it's something that would usually just be on the edge of something I would cover, I'll cover it on Friday. Seriously. It's Fridays are dead. I looked at our statistics. Somehow nothing happens on Mondays anymore, and nothing happens on Fridays.
Everything's
'Cause all
Tuesday,
the
Wednesday, and
embargoes
Thursday.
are Tuesday,
Yeah.
Wednesday. It changed a little bit. It used to be Mondays too. Fridays were always dead. But if you're a small company, consider
Actually-
those 2 dates.
You let a secret out of the bag.
No, I want to work.
No, he's right. He's right. Friday is not a bad day.
The other thing is that embargo times throughout the day are really nice. Like, talk about Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I mean, I've literally had Tuesdays when I've had 3 pieces set to go live at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
And that's not great for anybody. It's not great for me. It's not great for our site because all of a sudden we have this big pile up of content. Same thing goes for all of you because all of a sudden you're lost in the shuffle of all the other stuff that's happening because that's just me. We've got another, 8 or 9 writers on the team with me and, it's a multiplying effect.
Sure.
So if you want to hit a, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock Pacific embargo, be my guest.
Not a bad idea.
Yeah, or 3 a.m. Eastern time, or 4 a.m. Eastern time, or something like that. If you don't want anybody to see your story, that's a beautiful time. It's perfect, because by the time people wake up and read, all those 9 o'clock
gone.
embargoes will have pushed that off the front page anyway. It's off Twitter. Nobody sees it. It's beautiful. Bad news, 4 a.m. Eastern. 7 a.m. Pacific,
It's basically you and Twitter earnings at that
but
point.
people do it all the time.
Yeah.
And their PR agents tell them, please do this. You should, because that's when Google updates its index. It just baffles the mind that people would think that that's what happens. But
I've never
that
heard that one
happens.
before.
yeah.
That Google updates their index
At midnight.
No.
You
not
should
a
fire
fact.
that person who tells you
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I'm not saying I believe that. I covered Google for the last.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Source.
If a story does really well, for example, that we didn't expect to do well, we will likely feature it on the homepage. It won't disappear. We'll replay it on Facebook and Twitter, post it elsewhere, maybe make a social video out of it and put it on Instagram. There's Snapchat, I think, has a thing with pictures, and so there's a lot of there's all these different channels now, right? The homepage is not really how people come into a site anymore, for the most part. Most people come from other sources, mostly Facebook.
Email or the social networks. Yeah,
Yeah. Email newsletter if a story does
Yep.
really well.
That's
I
a
know you
big-
guys do the same.
a big traffic thing for us.
Yeah.
But what I'll say is that the fluke, I took a chance on this, particular story and it blew up thing. At that point, that's when you do a little bit of CSI with the analytics to see why it blew up.
Yeah.
Because if it could be that you're on an emerging trend that there's a lot of pent up demand for stories on that, in which case, heck yeah, I'm interested. In other cases, you get these sort of one-off white whale events where, somebody interesting retweets retweets a link to it, or, Hacker News picks it up and it just catches fire over there, or it catches fire over on Slashdot. Incidentally, Slashdot will still drive traffic in 2017.
We were talking about what kind of stories we would cover.
Yeah.
One of my tests is, would this be something Hacker News would likely pick up? Because I kind of imagine my audience to be very similar to the audience that reads
Probably.
Hacker News.
Yeah.
So it's a barometer too of what's interesting to the community.
Yeah. Damn, why don't I have Hacker News here on
You should.
the stage?
Next time.
Yeah.
Do not use adjectives. And if I see the word excited in a quote, that quote is gone. I don't care if the Pope is being quoted. Now, there's certain things you just give me the facts, tell me the news. You don't have to dress it up that much. I know that marketing people love to do that, and there's spin, and I understand that. But if I see something that is a potential news story, it's a new product that I think is cool, or anything from your company that I think is something that we would cover, I'm looking at it from a different standpoint. I'm looking for the facts. Just give me the facts. Tell me how the thing works. What's the business benefit? If you can, tell me how much it costs. If you have a picture of it, send me a picture. not a screenshot, but send me a picture of the logo or anything. Give me some facts to work with. And if it's something I want to take a look at, I will. And then if I need something else, I'll call you, or I'll send you an email. I won't call you, I'll send you an email. We don't use the phone anymore. So that's basically it. Just keep it to the facts, and let me know what it is, and tell me what the deadline is, what the embargo date is. I mean, that's just for a new product thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think Chris touched on this very lightly, but never call. Just don't call me out of the blue. I will answer every call that comes in to my phone that doesn't seem to be immediately a junk number, because that is my emergency hotline for, hey, dingus, you screwed something up to the point where I need to call you and we're going to have a conversation about it. And sometimes that happens, and it really sucks when it does. But other than that, like, that's the emergency hotline for drop everything that you're doing and deal with this buzzing thing on your desk. If you've sent me 2 emails and I haven't responded to either of them, the next step is not, hey, it's so great to talk to you, when the answer on the other end of the line is going to be, hey, this is Blair, with exactly this facial expression right here. Because I am in middle of dealing with something else, and odds are that answering a pitch is not the highest thing on my to-do list right at that point. To be a little bit more positive, the stuff that I love, front-loading what is interesting, again, like to what Chris said, I'm looking for facts. It doesn't need to be like, this is something that's, the most amazing thing in the universe, or our most important product launch of the year, or anything like that. I want to know, hey, here's what it does, here's what it fixes, here's why it matters. Right. And if you front load that in the first paragraph of a pitch to me with a subject line that isn't pitch for you, or yes. Innovative startup revolutionizes trendy market vertical, or other like, try to shove synergize in there just to make it work.
Yes.
Digital transformation is another one.
Digital. But the great thing about, if you're working for a company that's building a really fantastic product, the great thing is your news, when it's good, will speak for itself. I have had to deal with, there was a colleague of mine was working on a story, computer vision startup, and their PR person got in touch with him and said, it's not computer vision, it's AI vision. And I just kind of cocked my head at that, because it's like, we talk about stories internally, and I was paying attention to what he was working on, and I was like, why are they doing this? They've got real computer vision technology. Why are they trying to screw that up with some, meaningless marketing term? So if you've got great stuff, it'll speak for itself. And if you front load that in a pitch, I will be way more likely to cover it.
I'm gonna call a little bullshit on that one. Because Google could come out with something that's incremental, but and kind of experimental, and the number of end users or the amount of adoption is a bit shit. And somebody could be doing something that's really awesome, but just super deep in the stack, very technical.
Well, yes, but they get
very technical products sometimes don't speak for themselves, because I don't know.
At least in my case, I'm deep enough in the weeds with people that it'll speak to me. If you're talking about, hey, we're making it easier for developers to get started with Kubernetes. Holy crap, I've gotten that pitch a zillion times, so maybe don't do that. Because everybody's pitching that now, because it turns out that Kubernetes isn't the easiest thing in the world to use. Go figure. I've gotten some pretty deep in the weeds pitches that are that I will still follow up on, because I'll go there with people.
Yeah.
At the same time, you're perfectly fair to call bullshit. I will say Google gets an exception there.
Yeah.
Google, like, as soon as your company reaches a certain size, things that would be seemingly minor all of a sudden take on a whole different meaning. When I was at IDG, people really cared about like incremental updates to SharePoint. And if you're thinking like, God, this is my company's biggest news in its entire lifetime and I got bumped for SharePoint, yep, you did. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Google always gets an exception, even if.
No.
But let me add a couple of my pet peeves as well. You don't need to start your email with a joke. You don't need to tell me you just read an article from me that I wrote 3 days ago.
Although we're honored that you read it.
That has nothing to do with what you're pitching, but obviously it was awesome. But so, I don't know if that's being taught in public relations school, but I see that all the time, and I almost stop reading at that point. Your email subject, because don't call, obviously, but your email subject has to be as factual as possible. And it can't be, here's a pitch for you. Right. I get those a lot. It has to be, AI company gets $10 million funding, blah, 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 something like that. That's to the point, almost like a headline you would see on the website. Mm-hmm. No incremental updates. Email twice. I always tell people email twice. Don't give up after the first time because there's so much inbound.
Sometimes you have to knock on the door a couple
forget
times.
Stuff. I don't see. Sometimes I see it and I think that's awesome, and then something like the squirrel, right? Something else beeps and I forget it. But if I see the little 2 in Gmail next to it, I'll probably pay attention to it. One day. One day is fine.
Yeah.
1 day is fine.
I'll even say, for me, three times sometimes, because I get so much email.
Sure.
I can't see it all the time. I really can't.
But if you don't get an answer at that point, probably wasn't that interesting.
Or it didn't fit.
Because as much as I would love to tell everybody, oh, sorry, I can't do this because I have to do this and that, my day would be over at that point. So there's a high chance. There's also a chance I'll just say, this is really interesting. It's not for right now, but keep me in the loop, something like that. But never use the word revolutionary or I'll disrupt or something like that. Just keep the email factual and keep it short, especially the first one. Sometimes I get like a 3-page letter. It's too much. Initial contact. Just here. This is what we're doing. Do you think this is interesting for you?
So
done.
You say like factual, but like what's in the lead? Like there's kind of like credibility pieces that people should be dropping, and I kind of wanted to explore that a little.
Do you have users? Do you have, if it's a funding story, who's funding you? Mm-hmm. Do you have an advisor maybe who's interesting? Sometimes a lot of this also comes through introductions, right? It can be, my contact at Madrona will tell me, hey, there's an interesting story, or Dana will say, hey, I know this company. So there's definitely some of that as well. It's just in terms of credibility.
Yeah. What about customers?
Well, one problem, of course, is if you're an enterprise company, you often can't reveal your customers. Yeah. So that's sometimes a problem. But if you can say it's at least a couple of Fortune 500 companies, blah, 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 something like that.
Or if you're lucky enough to get the name of Walmart's using the product or something like that, that might be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Don't. I would personally, rather, especially in early stage companies, we still have maybe the time to do this, or maybe not, I don't know. I'm not a startup founder, but I would rather hear from you directly and hear from the founder than have to go through a PR agency. But yes, if you have absolutely no clue what you're doing, and you really, maybe you want to go with a PR agent. And I'm sure the PR people in the audience would totally disagree with me, and they'll say you need them and you need to pay them $10,000 a month. But I don't think that you do. Not at the stage in the company you probably are at this point.
Yeah, I think for me, what I have seen be really, really useful. Well, so first of all, when it comes to paying a PR agency, I guess to me the biggest question is, what are you hoping to get out of it? And also, is your company at a stage where you can really take advantage of, people pitching me? And is that going to be valuable for you as a company? Because one of the things that I always tell people is that press coverage is a lagging indicator of internal performance. By the time I write about something, people have been working on it for months, if not years, and just kind of slaving away at it. And then if you are a small company where you have maybe 2, maybe 3 pieces of news throughout an entire year, is it worth working with a PR agency? Especially because there are some PR agencies that will, then be working to get you in as a thought leader. We probably all get these pitches, which are like, hey, I noticed you wrote about Travis Kalanick leaving Uber. Do you have, are you interested in talking to HR expert so-and-so from company Y? And the answer is no. I wrote those 2 Travis stories as a one-off so that we could fill a news hole on the website. And that's actively harmful to you as a company because you're paying for somebody to give me a negative brand association for you. So I think, at the same time, if you're at a point as a company where it's like, yep, we've got traction, we've got a story, we've got stuff that's really worth talking about, then, then it would be worth looking into, getting some professional help. It also, it depends on your level of confidence as a founder. It depends on a whole lot of things. But I think, especially if you're not at seed, if you haven't raised a seed round, definitely not.
Spend your money on something else.
Yeah, what they said. And also, I always want to talk to the highest ranking officer of a company whenever possible. My readers expect that, I think. Although I talk to CTOs and CMOs all the time, whenever I can, I want to talk to the head of the company. Because in my experience, I cover over 100 companies, which is way too many, and I'm going to get that fixed soon. But the company starts at the CEO level and everything trickles down. That's where the pace is set. That's where the attitude is set. You're talking about Kalanick, good example. And that's where the example is, that leader. And that's really important. It filters down through the whole company. So I want to do that. I'll talk to PR agencies. PR agencies can be great because they're domain expertise. They know us generally. They can probably match you up with the right media outlets. So there's a lot of value there too, but I want to talk to the CEO whenever possible. That's my thing.
Yeah.
So that's an area where the two of us differ because I want to talk to the person who's roughly speaking senior most closest to the product.
Yeah.
So
I'm about business, the business use of new gen IT in legacy systems. And let's face it, everything's a legacy system because everything moves so quickly. And so that's what I want to find out. How is this going to help my business? What does this piece of hardware, software, or this cloud service do for me? I want to try to explain that as best I can.
I would rather talk to the product person. I don't want to talk to your marketing officer, for example, when you have a Kubernetes monitoring solution, because I want to talk to the person who knows about the product and as much about the product as possible. Yeah. If it's funding, I definitely want to talk to your CEO. But if it's product, I want to.
If it's business related, sure.
Yeah.
The one other thing that I'll say is, if you have a network of people who who are in a similar boat, reach out to them, and if they're using PR agencies, like find those people and find the people who are really successful.
Word of mouth is huge.
Because
really important.
Not all PR agencies are created equal. I'm sure a lot of you kind of intuitively would guess that, but it's very true. I refuse to name them publicly, but there are a couple of email domains that literally go to a different folder in my.
There's definitely bad ones.
So you've got the blacklist.
Yeah.
Why do people make it to the blacklist?
Because they consistently send me bad pitches, and it's on an institutional level, not an individual.
Wow.
Or they have light,
Huh.
Yeah.
just pure out, straight
Wow.
up light.
Hmm.
This company got acquired. Turns out a year later, no, they never did.
Really?
Yeah.
That's just bizarre.
It's absolutely bizarre. It makes me look bad because I trusted the guy.
Well, I
It's
think
very.
Oh,
It's,
you
it's,
wrote
it's
on
hard.
that, or?
Yeah, there was a very dirty kind of and then shady business going on, but those people disappear from my inbox. They just never show up
Yeah.
anymore. It's weird.
All right. Don't make it onto the blacklist.
But if you are at that seed round or even later and you do have funding, the venture funds that work with you, we've probably had dinner with them at some point or another. They know us too,
Oh,
all
yeah.
of them, and they can make those introductions as well. And they've got their own marketing people, and a lot of them.
Yeah, especially when you're early, like that can be a good way to sort of dodge spending money on a PR agency very early on. At some point, like you do have to make that VP of marketing hire somebody with media relations experience, or bring on an agency, or do both. But there's a stage at which you don't need that yet.
Or talk to founders who've already been covered too, because they can make that introduction.
Thank you very much for coming and joining us today and enlightening us about the PR and media processes. Let's all grab a beer and we can have some offline conversations now.
Okay.
Thank you very
Sounds
much.
good.
All right.